My fellow Americans, there's a certain kind of silence that falls over a room when someone says something so off base, so wildly disconnected from facts or common sense, that folks don't quite know whether to laugh or be concerned. Well, recently, that silence didn't last long, because Harvard, one of the oldest institutions of learning in the world, decided to speak up. In a world saturated with noise, where opinions often drown out facts, the difference between truth and fiction has become more crucial than ever. The speech addresses a moment when this difference was brought into sharp focus. Donald Trump, in his characteristic fashion, made public claims that sought to discredit a long-standing academic institution, Harvard, by portraying it as out of touch, elitist, or even un-American. But rather than engaging in a tit-for-tat argument, Harvard chose a different path. The institution responded with calm, factual clarity, letting the power of truth speak louder than any political provocation. This was more than a rebuttal. It was a reminder to the public that facts still matter. Harvard didn't need to resort to personal attacks or emotional outbursts. It stood firmly on the side of evidence, logic, and historical credibility. In doing so, it reminded us that truth is not decided by volume or popularity. Truth is not something that can be bent to suit one's narrative. It exists independently, grounded in reality, and proven over time. That's what made Harvard's response so powerful and, in many ways, humiliating for Trump. He attempted to undermine a respected institution with rhetoric and bravado, but the response he received wasn't loud or theatrical. It was rooted in substance, which made the contrast all the more striking. This moment wasn't just about one man and one university. It symbolized a deeper struggle we face as a society, whether we continue to uphold facts and reason, or whether we allow noise, misinformation, and charisma to redefine what's real. Harvard's response was a stand for the former. It showed that truth doesn't need to shout. It simply needs to be present, and when it is, it has a way of exposing falsehood effortlessly. Ultimately, the incident became less about political rivalry and more about the enduring value of truth. It was a demonstration that in the face of distortion, facts still have the power to cut through confusion and restore a sense of direction. Harvard didn't humiliate Trump through insult. It did so by reminding the world what integrity, knowledge, and truth look like when they're upheld with grace. That, in itself, was a quiet but undeniable victory for honesty. Education has always been a cornerstone of a strong and free society. In the speech, it is made clear that institutions like Harvard are not the enemy. They are the very foundation that helps build informed citizens, thoughtful leaders, and resilient democracies. When Trump attacked Harvard, attempting to portray it as an elitist institution disconnected from everyday Americans, it wasn't just an attack on a school. It was an attack on the idea that learning, knowledge, and critical thinking are valuable. But that narrative is deeply flawed. Education isn't about exclusion. It's about empowerment. It opens doors for people from all walks of life to rise above their circumstances, to discover who they are, and to shape the world around them. What makes Harvard and similar institutions vital is not just their age or prestige. It's their role in pushing boundaries, exploring big ideas, and challenging assumptions. The classrooms are filled with students from different backgrounds, different beliefs, and different corners of the world. They come together not to be told what to think, but to learn how to think. That's what makes education powerful. It doesn't hand out answers. It teaches you to ask better questions, and in doing so, it strengthens the very fabric of our democracy. Trying to turn people against education is dangerous because it fosters ignorance, division, and mistrust. When leaders undermine intellectual institutions, they are really undermining the idea that evidence, reason, and history matter. But the truth is, societies that devalue education are societies that stop progressing. They become more susceptible to fear, conspiracy, and manipulation. And that is something no democracy can afford. In the end, Harvard's role in this moment wasn't just about defending its reputation. It was about defending the principle that education serves the public good. It reminded people that universities are not ivory towers looking down on the world. They are engines of opportunity, innovation, and justice. They are places where tomorrow's leaders are shaped and where today's most pressing problems are studied and solved. The response to Trump served as a clear example of what it looks like when an institution refuses to be bullied into silence. It stood up not just for itself, but for the value of education in a free and informed society. When Harvard chose to respond to Trump's comments, it didn't do so with anger, sarcasm, or personal attacks. Instead, it leaned on what has always given it strength, its commitment to facts, reason, and integrity. In a time when public discourse often descends into insults and theatrics, the power of responding with clarity and dignity stands out. Harvard's reply wasn't emotional. It was measured, precise, and grounded in values that define intellectual excellence. That kind of response doesn't just correct falsehoods, it elevates the conversation and reminds us of what serious dialogue looks like. The brilliance of Harvard's response was in its restraint. It didn't stoop to the level of provocation. It didn't match noise with noise. It simply laid out the facts, corrected the record, and trusted the public to see the difference between rhetoric and reality. That's the power of intellectual discipline. It doesn't need to scream to be heard. It simply presents the truth with confidence, letting evidence and logic do the work. And when done well, as it was in this case, it's far more effective than any personal jab or political retort. This moment revealed something important about how institutions earn and maintain credibility. It's not by being the loudest voice in the room, it's by being the most consistent, the most honest, and the most principled. Harvard's response served as a reminder that real strength lies in maintaining composure when others choose chaos. It demonstrated that even in an environment filled with misinformation and outrage, there's still a place for thoughtful, intelligent responses. By refusing to engage in a war of words and choosing instead to stand firmly on its intellectual foundation, Harvard showed what it means to lead by example. It reminded us that education isn't just about facts. It's about how we respond to challenges, how we defend truth, and how we hold ourselves in public discourse. In doing so, it delivered a quiet but powerful rebuke, not just to one man's remarks, but to a culture that often celebrates noise over substance. And in that calm, firm stance, it didn't just defend itself. It inspired others to believe that truth, handled with discipline and dignity, still has the power to prevail. There is a growing danger in the way certain voices in power attempt to frame education and intellectualism as threats. When Donald Trump launched his criticism of Harvard, it wasn't just a personal opinion. It was part of a broader trend of anti-intellectualism that seeks to discredit expertise, devalue learning, and erode the authority of knowledge-based institutions. This kind of rhetoric is not harmless. It plants seeds of doubt in the public's mind about the very people and places that help us understand the world, solve complex problems, and move society forward. When leaders use their platform to undermine education, they are encouraging a culture where misinformation flourishes and reason is replaced by emotion and bias. Trump's statements reflected a deliberate attempt to make people suspicious of institutions like Harvard, not because these institutions are doing harm, but because they stand in contrast to the kind of reality he tries to construct. Places like Harvard represent deep thinking, careful analysis, and long-term vision. These are qualities that don't fit well with quick slogans, unverified claims, or shallow political narratives. And so, instead of engaging with these institutions, Trump and others choose to attack them, portraying them as elitist, corrupt, or disconnected. This tactic is not new, but it's especially dangerous now when the truth itself feels increasingly fragile. By casting suspicion on education, leaders like Trump attempt to lower the value of informed thought and elevate opinion as equal to fact. That shift can have serious consequences. It creates division, weakens critical thinking, and makes people more vulnerable to manipulation. When society stops trusting its scientists, scholars, and educators, it begins to lose its grip on what's real. And when that happens, decisions are no longer made based on evidence. They're made based on emotion, impulse, or blind loyalty. Harvard's response to Trump wasn't just about defending its name. It was about defending the role of education in preserving a functioning democracy. It was a pushback against the rising tide of anti-intellectualism that threatens to replace reasoned debate with chaos. It served as a reminder that we need institutions that are committed to facts, that welcome scrutiny, and that operate with transparency and purpose. Without them, we don't just lose universities, we lose one of the few things still anchoring us to reality. Education is often misunderstood by those who have never experienced its deeper purpose. It's not simply about memorizing facts or earning degrees. True education humbles us. It challenges our assumptions, exposes us to new perspectives, and forces us to confront what we do not yet know. In the speech, this point is made clear, that education, when embraced with sincerity, doesn't inflate the ego. It refines the character. Harvard and institutions like it are not in the business of creating arrogance. They are designed to nurture curiosity, discipline, and empathy. When Donald Trump dismisses or attacks these institutions, he's not just speaking to their reputations. He's ignoring the process that millions of students go through, often coming from difficult backgrounds, to better themselves and contribute meaningfully to society. Many of the people who walk through Harvard's halls aren't born into privilege. They fight to get there. They study hard, they sacrifice, and they grow. What they gain is not just a diploma. It's the ability to think critically, listen respectfully, and lead with understanding. Education, at its best, breaks down barriers. It brings people from different walks of life together and helps them see the world through each other's eyes. This kind of transformation doesn't create elitism. It creates empathy. And that empathy is what allows good leaders to connect with people, to serve with integrity, and to make decisions that lift communities rather than divide them. When someone tries to twist that into a negative, they are distorting something that is essential to both personal growth and national progress. In responding to Trump, Harvard not only defended itself, but also defended the idea that education is a force for good. It reminded the public that the real value of learning lies not in feeling superior, but in realizing how much more there is to understand. That realization keeps us grounded, focused, and open-minded. And in times of division, it's precisely that humility and depth of thought that we need most. Education teaches us not to fear questions, but to embrace them, not to reject those who think differently, but to engage with them. And that mindset, developed in classrooms, nurtured in libraries, and tested in open debate, is what builds a stronger, more compassionate society. In a world where misinformation spreads quickly and loud voices often drown out reason, the importance of defending truth cannot be overstated. The speech highlights that Harvard's response was not just about correcting false claims made by Donald Trump. It was a necessary stand for the principle that truth must be protected, especially in times of widespread distortion. When an institution like Harvard, known for its rigorous commitment to facts and learning, is attacked, the response isn't just about preserving its reputation. It's about upholding a much larger ideal that affects every part of society. When someone undermines knowledge, they're not only targeting academics, they are weakening the public's ability to think critically and make informed decisions. Attacks on truth are rarely isolated. They are often part of a broader effort to control narratives, diminish accountability, and distract from deeper issues. That's why defending institutions that protect truth is not just a matter for scholars or students. It's a responsibility that belongs to everyone who believes in justice, fairness, and democracy. Harvard's decision to speak out was a reminder that silence in the face of falsehood is not neutral. It's dangerous. Remaining quiet gives space for misinformation to spread unchallenged, slowly reshaping public understanding and trust. By answering clearly and respectfully, Harvard not only corrected the record, but also modeled how truth should be defended, with composure, evidence, and conviction. That kind of leadership is especially important when misinformation is dressed up as patriotism, or when powerful figures use their influence to discredit any voice that dares to disagree. What this moment showed is that truth still has power, but only if people and institutions are willing to stand up for it. Harvard did that, and in doing so, it reminded the public that truth doesn't protect itself. It needs defenders. It needs people who are willing to speak when it's easier to stay silent, who are willing to stand firm when the pressure to conform is overwhelming. At its core, the speech calls on all of us to recognize the value of truth, not just as a concept, but as a guiding force in how we live, lead, and learn. Because when truth is lost, everything built on it, justice, trust, and progress, begins to fall. But when it is defended, even against powerful opposition, it lights the way forward.